Good afternoon and welcome to our April edition of the Ohio State University South Centers Chat. My name is Tom Worley. I am the director at Ohio State University South Centers at Piketon, Ohio. And we are back with you this month with another edition of the chat, and want to talk a little bit further as we get started this afternoon in terms of technology. But before we approach that topic, I want to just say that and remind you that our programs at Piketon for the university include aquaculture, research and development, horticultural and specialty crops, and this gets into a lot of work with various berry crops especially. And we've added wine grape trials to our research program and have an extension program surrounding wine grapes and their cultivation and production and marketing. A third program is business development, and we work with all types of businesses, not just agricultural businesses, although those are included, but we have contracts that we serve small business development clients with counseling, business planning, financial planning, marketing, all the aspects that go into a success as a small business. And then the fourth major program area is soil, water, and bioenergy resources. And this has a lot to do with using our natural resources in agriculture, but also sustaining those resources and developing new uses for biomass in terms of renewable energy are part of the trials that we have. So we'll be highlighting some of those other programs in later programs as the months go along. But today, we want to focus in especially with my good colleague at South Centers, Duane Rigsby, who's with me here today. Welcome, Duane.
Thank you, Tom.
Glad that you could join. And Duane is a very key person on our staff at South Centers in that he provides technical expertise, information technology expertise, and that he has been at OSU South Centers at the very beginning. That we're coming up next year, we'll make 25 years for the South Centers, and Duane has been there all of those years. So he's seen technology change and grow and develop. But before we even talk about that, Duane, could you share with us just a little bit about your background and how you kind of ended up in having all this specialized expertise in IT?
Sure, Tom. Thank you. I've been at the center since it opened in 1991, I believe it is. Started out not as a technology person at all. Actually started out as a research assistant. When the facility opened, we had only a small amount of technology. I believe we only had on hand, we only had technically one computer, one PC, I should say, IBM brand. Now, we had another system that was called Next computers, and they were like an off-brand or an offspring of Mac, if you would. And everybody knows what a Mac versus a PC is. But we had a Next system, and they were just other brand machines and really expensive to a degree. But back then, every technology was expensive.
It was pretty new, wasn't it?
Yeah, everything was pretty new, exactly. So, but we only had maybe 5 of those even. So we were really limited on computers at that time. And and where we're located in Piketon, we're a couple of hours from Columbus. So we really never had a lot of I'm not going to say communications, but not a lot of support came, came from Columbus to help us out and grow and make that work really good for us. And our the original director was kind of in that role. He was kind of a techie, if you would, and then did things of that nature. And he was the one that really supported it at the beginning. And then I basically, at lunchtime and anytime we were in the building and such, I first started in the field. So I was a research assistant. I helped out in the crops and on aquaculture as we were there.
You were planting and harvesting?
Planting, harvesting, grabbing fish, putting
Right.
them back in the ponds, you name it. That's what we did. There was only a few of us there. I think there was about 3 of us outside total. And
You actually had a degree at that time,
yeah,
right?
I did. Yeah, I was. I had I have two natural resources degrees.
Okay.
From Hocking College.
Okay.
And started there. And that's how I got into the research side. I was out there doing that. But as we went along, this technology stuff kind of rolled and kept evolving, and our original director basically said, somebody's going to have to kind of take a role or a lead, if you would,
Right.
and learn some of this, because again, I don't think we're going to get the support on a regular basis, not like being on campus and such, not just being right there walking across to the other building and taking care of us. So somebody has to kind of be an extra role in that. And for some reason I kept leaning over his shoulder at lunchtime or asking questions about that, and that's really where my role or how I got really into technology. But I've always been wanting, I tore apart VCRs and things like that back in our days.
Inquisitive guy.
Yeah. I wanted to know how that stuff worked.
Yeah.
And there's great big video cameras that you don't see today, but you know, you
Set
set
on
it on
your
your
shoulder.
and it held a big VCR tape and things.
I think our audience will remember those.
Yeah, I think some of them back there, right? We can hear them chuckling.
Yeah.
But they were that's the kind of things that I kind of grew up on, even though I didn't do that at the center.
Right.
And it just kept going, and as it kept going, maybe the director was out or such, and they would holler at me, or they would they may have to call me or something. I may be out in the field on a tractor, and one of the first technology things that I can remember is that we had two-way radios.
Okay.
There at the center, and
Okay.
just like little walkie-talkies, if you would. Now they were a little more powerful walkie-talkies, but we bought, basically you would say top of the line if you could, and that was our communication between the center and the staff outdoors. And I'll never forget it. I always tell this story because I think it's one of my key pieces of when the technology really hit me, the technology bug, if you would. I was actually in a tractor out in the field,
Okay.
and Marcia Amlin, which is there at the center today,
Yep.
calls me on the radio and actually said, Duane, we've got a problem in the building. The building's really getting really warm. And there was no one else around that could help us at that time.
Control the HVAC.
Control the HVAC, if you would, the heating and air system.
Yeah.
And it was a nice hot summer day out there, and Marcia gets on the radio and hollers at me, and I'm going along in this tractor, actually disking, I think it was disking, plowing, I don't remember exactly which one it was, and I'm telling her how to reset things as I'm in the tractor. And that was really the first bug that really hit me, and that's when it really got involved more into technology, into the center itself, and then it involved into telephone systems. It evolved into the internet more for us. It was there before, but we never really, other than email was our key communication there. We all went to one computer and checked our email. At the very beginning, yeah. It was really basically one. Now, when I say everyone, it was
dozen people or so?
Yeah, we had some of the program development people. They had their own computer there, but we had kind of had one there set aside that, like the farm manager and myself and a few others that kind of run everywhere. We just went there at lunchtime and grabbed an email or whatever if we needed to send something. Or
And now we're so dependent on email, we can't hardly operate if the internet goes down.
Exactly. It seems like that's the key. The prime thing for communication is email and stuff for the professional people, I guess, if you would. But it also kids and everything now, they have completely other means of communication. So,
tell me how do you keep on the cutting edge as well as you do with changing technologies?
Technology does change almost daily. There's so much that changes, from computers to the internet, if you would, the way it runs, the speed of it, things like that.
And now our mobile.
And now, yeah, I actually brought, you know, your phone and everything right here. This is kind of the life of the technology guy, if you would, or person, I should say. And it's really a small computer. That's really what it is. You can get your email. You can do all kinds of word processing, you name it on there, and things, and other things that we'll talk about shortly. But it's really, I do a lot of online looking, researching, things of that nature, and a lot of hours after the job to keep up on it. That's really the way it is.
Something that you really enjoy. It is way more than a job.
It is really way more than a job to stay up on this and to stay so. I'm not going to say I'm not cutting edge by any means, but you have to keep following the curve and not fall off the curve.
You're part of a professional society as well as...
I am actually. A couple of years ago, I got, well, more than a couple of years ago, I got involved in a conference that we call NETSI. It's called the National Extension Technology Conference. It's held every year at a different university.
around the country.
Around the country, around the U.S., yeah. Last year, we were in Kansas. This year, we'll be in Montana.
Oh, wow.
And a couple of years, 2 years ago, I got on the steering committee. We have a steering committee and such, and then I was actually voted. I'm now the president of the organization, and we made it.
On that.
Yeah, thank you. It's a full organization now. We're members strong. We're keep going, so we're glad of that, and and that's another way that we educate ourselves.
Yeah. Share information.
Share what other universities are doing, and a lot of times we pick up and say, "Hey, you know, how do you do that? That's what we're wanting to do." So that's how we work.
And the real mission is to try to adapt technology as we try to deliver our extension information, the education, the data, the research results, is to make use of technology more and more.
Right. Yeah, and it's the way to get that information out there. And I think because there's so much that the public's doing today. Years ago, we would have programs and things like that to where they would come to the extension office or our center, and there would be 50 or 100 people there on a regular basis, and just today they're not because of family life, having that maybe second job now and things like that they just can't come and get that information, and also now that the internet is so prominent that they can grab it anywhere.
Exactly.
And so we have to adapt to get that information up there for them, for us to be in that lead role, if you would, if at all possible.
Yes, we feel it's important to try to embrace the technology in these programs that I described at the beginning, you know, in terms of information about fish farming and information about berries and soil and business, to make that available more and more on the internet. And I know we have a long way to go, but we are started down that path, and even our program today is a little bit of that in terms of using a new medium to create recordings that can be preserved, that we get it, hopefully some information captured that can reside in cyberspace, and people can access that, not necessarily at 3 o'clock on Wednesday afternoon, but that it's available 24/7.
It's available 24/7
whenever they're looking for it. So we're grateful to be embracing this technology today, and indeed there have been many changes. So part of what our mission is at South Center is to be a leader in technology, even though we have to be honest. I know you would correct me, and I think you already did once, about being on the leading edge. We're far from the leading edge. Universities just don't move that fast. They don't have the budget to buy the latest and the greatest every time. So, but we do our best to try to help educate the general population through trainings and workshops. Would you want to talk about some of the examples of these programs that we've had in the region that try to get people a little bit more acclimated to adopting technology and making good use of it?
Sure. Some of it started out with our Business and Economic Development Group. A few years ago, we actually started with some businesses that were startups or some existing businesses. They actually wanted websites or web pages, if you would. But they never had anything to advertise, a way to advertise or a way to sell, and they wanted to start that more. So what we did was we first developed a small curriculum program and actually offered training on how to develop web pages or a website in general. And from everything to I don't have a website, period, how do I start, to, oh, well, find your domain name or the name that, you know, when you type in a web address bar. For us at the center, it's southcenters.osu.edu. So things like that. How they could register that name, and then the next step is how do they go from there? How do they build that web page? How do they get their information up there? And we did that, and that was about a six-session course that we went through. And then after that, we kept going, and we got into social media a little more. A little thing called Twitter and Facebook and things like that.
Now these were one-day workshops?
A lot of those were one-day.
Half a day?
Yeah, a lot of those were one day, 3/4 of a day kind of thing. They, depending on where we had them, sometimes they were at the center, sometimes they were at other partners, groups that we work with, such as, you know, Chillicothe, in those areas. Things like that. But then came more of our partners actually helping us using our facility. We are there at the center. We have what's called an Endeavor Center. It's a business incubator that I think Ryan Mapes manages today. And in that building, we have a 16-station computer lab, and a local community action group helps us. They teach computer classes there today. With things like Word and Excel, PowerPoint, things like that.
Kind of the basic level?
Kind of at the basic level. I think they actually offer 3 different levels, from basic to actually advanced. And it all depends on the group. They could be tailoring one company. One company may come to them and say, you know, I'd like for our group to get brushed up on Excel or something like that, and we know it, so let's give us a little bit higher up or something specialty to that degree, and things. So that goes on at the center as well. So lots of things like that. Lots of activities that you can even participate at the center.
Now, do we have other staff members, I think, that specialize a little bit in technology and certain training programs anyway?
We do. Again, back to the Business and Economic Development Group, we have Melissa Carter. She has been teaching social media for quite some time. Social media anywhere from Twitter, Facebook, things like that, to actually back to a web page, but more of the cookie cutter web pages, if you would. Kind of all you do is kind of click and build the pages and such.
They're templates out
there.
They're
template ready driven websites now, and there's lots of things like that. And then we have Kim Rouse. She does some training as well, kind of the same topics. They just have different parts of the state or our region, if you would. So,
and I'm sure you've noticed over your career, and I do over mine, that the more people we hire into most any position, the more technically adept and savvy they tend to be.
That's true.
One of our most recent hires is Sarah in our front office, who has the graphic design aspect, kind of the flair for color and pictures and how to incorporate more eye-catchiness and to get the message across graphically on websites. And so we're appreciative of skills that she brings to kind of incorporate with these more technical based aspects of IT.
That's right.
Very good.
The other things that we do, and in some cases will educate the public, and sometimes, and I guess I should say the public educates us.
Oh yeah, it's a two-way street, I think.
Because in where we're located in southern Ohio, rural Ohio, if you would, we don't have the access that some big cities and things like that do have of internet access. You know, if you're in Columbus and things like that, you've pretty much got an unlimited access to internet at 24/7. To where if you're living in southern Ohio, southeastern Ohio, things like that, a lot of times we're dependent on access, meaning that you may have DSL, you may have cable. You may have to rely on a satellite dish because you don't have access to cable, or the phone company can't provide you a DSL cable. And a lot of times they say, well, you have a telephone line. And that's where that modem came in a long time ago.
The phone line.
Over the phone line, yeah. And so now the phone company has gotten to where they can offer high speed, but not to everyone still yet today. A lot of people think that the phone company provides that, no problem. They can't do that to every location still today. And a lot of people in southern Ohio have to rely on either a satellite dish, and they get it from up in the space. So that's where that came
Now,
from.
if they happen to be in a place like Portsmouth or Jackson or Gallipolis, they would most likely have access to some sort of a cable high-speed access. Is that a true statement?
Well, they could, yeah. They again, the cable company could offer high-speed access to them. There's other things. There's other things that typically the organizations, schools and things like that, could have access to that maybe the general public doesn't have necessarily have access to.
Are you referring to Third Frontier Network?
Yeah, you could. Yes, Third Frontier Network. That's typically more schools, local high schools, universities, things like that, and that's what ties them all together.
Right. And that was supported by at the state level. Is that true? To laid some fiber optic cable.
Yep, and laid some that were dark, and when I say dark, meaning that some of the cable that some other maybe phone companies started to run and didn't finish, so they're just laying there empty, and they just activated them, kind of a thing. So lots of things like that.
Yeah.
And
Well, Duane, we're jumping around here, but I did want to kind of move toward a different area just a little bit. And, a couple of phrases that I hear are big data. Ohio State University has an emphasis on a big data initiative as one of its areas that it wants to focus on at the university level. It's hiring faculties and having buildings renovated to work with so-called big data. And then a second one that I think fits right in there is the cloud.
The cloud,
Can
yes.
you help us grasp what we mean by big data, the cloud, some of these newer terms?
Sure. Everybody will vary in what you want to call big data. I call big data is now all of this digital world that we have. Video cameras, still cameras. You can literally take an unlimited amount of pictures with high quality cameras now. Even your phones are much higher quality, and you got to have a place to store that and things like that. But then also these number crunching and things like that. And I'm going to try to lean toward farmers in a general sense, because we deal a lot with farmers. Is that the technology world of farming has changed. And I think that's where big data comes into play there. All things like GPS systems now, tractors that drive themselves, or you're sitting off to the side driving them or looking at them and through a video camera or such. And I think what we've got on the screen now is one of a system that runs that tractor, if you would, and it. A farmer sets that little GPS system up on the side, and the tractor runs itself back and forth through the field. And
driver optional, right?
Driver optional, if you would. And there's another one you can see all the systems in the tractor, and even at that, it's other things of planting. Say that, again, it's all related to GPS. You may be driving along through the field, and now the farmer can say, oh, we don't need as much fertilizer there, or maybe we need more seed rating there. And because of this big data, all this data this farmer collects now can help them reduce their cost.
Kind of gets down to
fine-tuning the field.
Specifically areas in a field
Absolutely.
to try to maximize the output of corn, soybeans, wheat, whatever the case may be.
Absolutely, yes.
And minimize, try not to over-fertilize or try to overpopulate with a corn population, so to speak.
Absolutely.
Or pesticides. If there's certain areas that show up with weed pressure, then we don't spray the whole field, but we only can sort that out and turn the thing on and off as it goes over those spots. Is that accurate?
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. And now, as we're coming into new technology or newer technology, there's things out there that people used to be called drones, and that's really a bad word in sunsets. And
UAV is in
UAV,
vogue, right?
yes, UAV is the new thing, and what we've got on the screen right now, that's not the drone or UAV we're talking about. That's like military grade. Okay. We're talking about these little things like this, and they could be no more than 3 inches wide to things like this could be a foot or so wide, or
these have
2
shown
feet.
up the last couple Christmas times, it seems
Yeah,
like.
yeah, they do. Yeah, they do. They're coming along, and used to a year or two. Now these have been around a while, but really people couldn't afford them.
Right.
Other than
the toy
the big
types,
yeah. And now they're coming along with technology that they can put GPS cameras on them. They can put infrared cameras on them and things like that. And what farmers are going to use them for now is to fly over that field.
Okay.
Even after they planted it with the GPS, they may now fly over it, because here in the last 2 or 3 days we've had a lot of rain.
Absolutely.
And some of those fields may be flooded out. And this helps that farmer to go through and look at that field at a height.
So he can scout.
They scout the field, yeah.
Yep.
So they don't have to walk the entire field now.
Right.
And they can see if they need to replant, or they need to
Might
do
detect
something.
weed pressure as well.
Exactly,
Could pick
detect
up with
weed pressure.
Infrared, I presume, in
Yeah.
terms of the amount of vegetation, and if it changes, they can spot things going on
Absolutely.
from the air that they might even miss if they're on the ground.
Exactly,
unless they systematically walk, which tends to
Yep.
get pretty hard for the size of farms and fields that we have today.
Yep, absolutely. And again, that all leads back to that timing thing.
Yep.
They've got other things they've got to do.
Yeah.
They've got, so this reduces their time.
And a lot of these
managing.
applications of fertilizer or pesticides needs to be timed very precisely to have the maximum benefit
right.
for the dollars invested. So I think it's a real benefit and holds a lot of potential to increase the efficiency of our farms even more than they have over time.
Yeah. And that's where all that big data comes from. There, all of that stuff has to be collected somewhere, and that's where you're talking about the cloud. You're talking about what's called external storage and things. One individual can't hold all of this data, so we use what's called the cloud now. And really, all the cloud is another computer up in the not in the cloud. It's attached somewhere through the internet.
Wirelessly routed, though, more or less, at some
Not
point.
necessarily. It could be a combination of both, wireless and wired. The system or the computer that we're storing all of that data on is probably wired.
Okay.
What's wireless is this, or the camera,
Okay.
or whatever we're collecting
Okay.
or sending the data to.
Okay.
I might be sending pictures, things like that, from my phone
Via Wi-Fi.
to
a connection that then
that's wired.
takes it by fiber
exactly.
optic onto the data
Typically,
farm.
yes, typically the fastest thing is a wire to get the data there. But we don't want to be tied by wires. We want to be tied by, we want to be unbound by that.
Absolutely.
But that's how all of that data is in the cloud, and then it helps with that, because then somebody else is relying on managing that data.
Exactly.
So you don't have to worry about that computer crashing or things like that. You're worrying about other things like the fields and things like that.
Duane, I know our time's getting down to just the last 2 or 3 minutes, but can you, as we've talked about all the data that's being generated from agriculture, but then we can go to our health system, our personal health information, our financial information, or even, how often our refrigerator runs maybe, or our HVAC system at home, this so-called Internet of Things, and how much data that generates. What about security? What about privacy? What about who gets to use this data? Who has access? Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Well, that's again is a huge problem today, and it varies in different levels, from health to your personal data. And everybody now seems to be using credit cards online, and they have a profile, if you would, called Facebook or Twitter or all them. They all have what's called profiles, and depending on how much information you put in there is depending on how much can be stolen. You've heard on the news plenty of times that even Target, stores like that, they're stealing data. It all depends on the data. The credit card, now you may have a bad credit now, things like that, and so you have to protect that. And how you protect that is there's lots of different ways. A, you either just don't use it.
Okay.
B, use it very carefully,
Uh-huh.
and C, when you're using social media and such, don't be putting things out there that's saying, I'm on vacation.
Uh-huh.
Well, all that does is tell someone that's a burglar or such, my house is open to the public.
Unprotected.
Unprotected.
Yeah. You need to be aware of the risk, it seems, and
Exactly.
recognize that there is a risk and try to take some measures that prevent that from happening.
Right.
I think that we're just winding down here within a few seconds, Duane, and I'll just mention one thing, that the most recent thing I read about security, and it's not very big, but I think it has a lot of implications, that as our passwords get stolen, and that's how people get into access,
Absolutely.
that technology now is moving toward image recognition
Image,
that can
yeah.
match your face with what's stored, or even voice recognition, and make that your access point into systems and so forth. This has been a great discussion. I think that, Duane, I want to thank you for joining me this afternoon at a really
Tom.
interesting sharing of information about information technology, and I can attest that you're a wealth of knowledge, and you keep us all running over at OSU South Centers with our everything from MyPC to the HVAC system to the phone system, as you've mentioned, and we appreciate that very much, and we'll have another opportunity to take this a step further one of these days. Thanks
Thank
again,
you.
Duane.
Thank you.
Okay.